Welcome to Crucible Cloudworks Live. My name is Chris, and each week we'll be interviewing professionals in their respective fields to get a behind-the-scenes look at what their day-to-day life is like and what it took to get there. It is my goal to empower you to find a role that you feel confident in, and maybe by listening to our guests speak, you too can find your way. Wherever you are right now, you're in the right place. So let's get started. Today, we're with Dion, the CEO of Raster Technologies. Hey, Dion. So we've connected with you on LinkedIn and noticed that you offer an innovative solution. Innovative, unique. How's that sound? Yeah, we connected with you and noticed you offer quite a unique solution to comic book creators to collaborate with one another. Is this what Raster Technologies is involved in?
Absolutely. You have it right. First of all, thanks for having me, Chris. It's good to be here. By the way, I love the guitars in the background. Those are super. But yes, so Raster, we created Raster a number of years ago. And really the premise was to empower indie comic creators with tools that would help to protect their IP, monetize it better, give them some more options through licensing and peer-to-peer sales. Also, more data insights and more effective collaboration with the peers that they produce with, as well as the consumers and fans that enjoy their works. So, our job was really to create some software that would be programmed with business logic to kind of, what we like to say is kind of cheat for them, right?
Okay.
They're really great at comics and they're great at visual storytelling, and we want to help them with the business side of things.
Okay. So what unique business challenges would indie comic creators run into, perhaps, that, Raster can help kind of smooth the waters?
Absolutely. So one of the things is monetization. A lot of creators, and I say this a lot of creators, if we look at the illustrators, even the writers, graphic designers, they will create a number of IP assets. And a lot of this will usually be featured on their websites or someone else's websites, but they don't monetize it. And it's got a lot of value. And, our goal is to get a lot of that inventory that's sitting on the shelves out there and circulating into productions and to, other projects that could really use it.
Okay.
Really, make those projects more efficient. The other thing is the creators really don't have custom technology software tools for them. When we say art, we usually think of the illustrators, really focus on them, but artists, musicians, cosplayers, costume performers, fashion designers, the graphic designers and the writers. These people cannot be forgotten about. And there really aren't enough custom tools that really allow for the collaboration that they need and collaborations that they can have.
I guess to use an example, perhaps that may show off her age, number one, but also perhaps is a little more accessible. Is this similar, perhaps, to what George Lucas ran into in the first Star Wars movies when he didn't realize the power of the the licensing properties that would be available at the time? Is it similar to that, or are you helping creators explore these new avenues? So.
Yeah, that's a very interesting comparison. I have a friend who's in love with Star Wars, and I think that comparison we'd have to ask him about. However, what we find is that creators typically are kind of overlooked. The indie creators, small creators, are overlooked for the deals. And as far as we're concerned, they make up the majority of the deal space.
You're right.
And there are a lot of values there. Well, there's no one that's really in the space that's helping to quantify and really show larger companies what these values are, so that larger companies can tailor more of their products and services and contracts and collaborations and fit them to these smaller creators. And so our work really is to expose them to licensing
Right.
earlier. Whereas, most people, if you're not cherry picked, where, say some agent looks in and says, wow, that's great. Let's contact this person. Let's get
Mm.
it on Netflix or something along those lines. It's not until that creator has built up some commercial success and brand recognition that then a lot of other organizations, larger organizations, would be interested in taking the shot with them and bringing them into that commercial space.
Understood. Okay.
Yeah. And so, so our responsibility really is to bring licensing as a tool to them now. Now, that's not a part of the vertical, it's a part of the horizontal, but it's an important part. And it's not one where these creators have to have the brand recognition that is typically or traditionally associated with the ones that, are brought forward in that area. So we think that there are some great opportunities for licensing at the local level and also with large companies. And it's our job to experiment and kind of create this environment to bring it all together.
Okay, so certainly you're bringing a lot of passion to the table for this too. Like, are you
Big time.
also a comic creator, or how did you come into this line of work?
Years ago, I wouldn't, say that I'm an artist anymore, but years ago, I was an illustrator. And it was my, passion to want to get into comic books full time. I got more into business. I left that alone for a while, but I came back, and as you can see behind me are a couple posters from two of the series that we produced as Titanium Comics. But as an indie creator, I really saw there are just thousands of indie creators out there, and we weren't bringing any more real value. We're bringing more stories, more characters, but I just felt there was more value I could bring with the business background I had and a little bit of technology insights that I had. And so it was important for me to pivot the company and really begin to create tools that would address the broader, wider indie market that really don't have a champion.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That makes sense. But then to try to factor in some of your unique technological approaches to solving this problem, I mean, do you have any background in technology yourself? I mean, did you grow up using computers when you were an illustrator?
Yes.
Did you, use a Wacom tablet, or did you use the good old pencils, right?
No, I don't think Wacom was around when I was illustrating. I'm a child of the 70s and the 80s. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Back when comics were good, right? Yeah.
Well, there's a few today, but yeah, when they were the best, absolutely. But, there was Bristol board and pencil, when I was around.
Yeah, an illustration board, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But in terms of technology, my guys are they are the linchpins in terms of the technological expertise. I'm more of a visionary.
Right.
Now, I've had experience with computers, for a very, very long time. And in my professional environment, I've had access to advanced technologies that I used with my work for the Department of Defense. So I've been around technology, but I've had to immerse myself into more, of course, to prepare myself to create tools for creators.
Yeah, so it's always interesting to see how people kind of come into the technology field, right? And it looks like in your case, it's really your business background that drove a lot of it. Sure. I mean, and to speak to that business background, how did you and Raster find funding and partners to get started? It's probably a difficult pitch deck at first, right? So was there a secret to your success early?
Well, there's no real secret, I suppose. The term bootstrapping is where we're at. We are self-funded, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I think it's very important that creators understand the statistical data relating to their success rate and possible failure rate, possible success and possible failure rate. For Black businesses, when it comes to angel, VC, private equity, we get less than 1% of the total funding. Now, when you look across venture capital, right before the pandemic, it was right around the same amount as the global gaming industry revenue, very close, if not a little bit past 200 billion. So
Right.
just imagine with what less than 1% looks like. It seems like it's, a lot, but, we're a group that make up, 13, 14% of the population. And we are the second largest employers of Black people next to the federal government.
Right.
And my team is definitely, we're very diverse on my team, international team. But we've had to bootstrap. I have been, I would say, surprised at technology backers, in the VC and the angel environment, both in Europe and the United States, that have kind of looked past projects, not just my own, but others that really bring value over a lot of sensation and fluff.
Yeah.
Well thought out projects in the food tech space, the beauty and hair care environment, in the digital and physical marketing environments. I'm surrounded by brilliant entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs I think are more brilliant than myself, and it is a tough climb up, but a lot of us bootstrap. And so I funded the company. I funded Titanium.
Mm-hmm.
I funded all my businesses.
Right.
In my life, I think I've started probably 15 businesses. So I'm not like a obsessive serial entrepreneur, but I've had 3 large businesses, and this is the third one, being Raster.
Understood. I think there's definitely more to be said at the end of the day for these bootstrapped businesses that have a tougher go of things. But you're not beholden to anyone, right? And the thing is, at the end of the day, I think even for all these like Silicon Valley dream stories that we always hear about, funders are only in there to get an exit. Right.
Oh,
they're only there to get an exit. No one cares about you,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
you're the only person who can care about yourself. Right. So I think that's something that gets lost in a lot of these, like, unicorn stories that are out there. Right.
Yeah.
So.
And those stories tend to abbreviate a lot of things that we don't typically get to hear about, know about, because if you did, they wouldn't be as sensational.
Yeah.
But the real growth, the real stories are in the risk takers.
Yeah.
They're in the guys and girls that are tinkering at 12, midnight, 1, 3 in the morning. That's, not that, those other people are not, but it's a different uphill battle. And, I think it's worthy of more attention for sure. Definitely.
Yeah, and I feel you there, because it's like the cats that are there grinding for 10, 12 years just to make it work, bootstrapping everything. Yeah. That's not a story you could sell Hollywood, but like, hey, you get like a founder that Ashton Kutcher can play or something like that later on. Yeah,
right.
I see it there. Right. So the thing is, how, I guess, in talking about how long it takes to grind something out, how long has Raster, been developing its flagship product here?
Great question. So our flagship product is Hero Ledger, which is a B2B marketplace. And I'll go a little bit into that in a moment. But to answer your question, we released our minimum viable product in 2020. And from 2020, we have, in fact, during the pandemic, we were really, we were supported by, a great group of people, the team from Comic Crusaders, Alex Perez, and we were able to debut the technology during their event, online Comic-Con. And from that point forward, we moved to initiate our first blockchain. So we have Comic Chain, which is the blockchain piece that's connected to Hero Ledger.
Hero Ledger, right.
And those were basically MVPs. So from that period of time to now, what we've been working on is upgrading the features, upgrading the security, making sure that the code is nice and clean and that it's functional and secure for our users. It is a slow process, and it's got a huge learning curve for us,
Mhm.
but we're getting there. We're getting there. Our goal is to launch this year, and I'd say we're on track.
Excellent. Yeah, I have so many questions about blockchain. I mean, that's been a passion of mine. Not in the way that people think. I think a lot of people think blockchain, they think like Bitcoin or something, but there's technological potential for there's potential for the technology that extends well beyond what people are familiar with, and I'd love to dive into that deeper. But I do have to ask, on the business level of things, how was Hero Ledger originally received by other creators?
Originally, and we have a number of people that we introduced the concept to. When I wrote, for context, it was received well. But
Okay.
when I wrote the first white paper in 2018, I released it in March 2018. One of our reviewers said, it brought him to tears. I had never written a white paper like that, and I'm
All right.
thinking, oh wow, this sucks, right? But he said, no, it was a great paper. It reminded him of the struggle of trying to get creators to really see what they can do with technology, where they can
Mhm.
really take things. It is a struggle sometimes
Yeah.
because there's a commercial space that sensationalizes itself, rightfully so, right? It's trying to make money or it's making money.
Yeah.
And that can become, almost like me living in Vegas, the bright lights, you're drawn to them. But the reality is, there's a lot of competition there. And sometimes it's better to get into the areas where there's a lot more white space. There are less people, in those areas to compete against, and you can have greater advantage. Well, when we introduce the concepts of what if you could license on your terms? What if, the licensees were really in your face to acquire or to license, lease and use what it is you have, would you position it for this? And we heard
Mhm.
yes. We asked them, what if you could take all that extra art while you're working or looking for, um, you know, uh, a job with Disney or a job with Netflix or
Yeah.
Sony, and you could get that art monetized and it wouldn't interfere with that. Would you do it? Yes. So we took time with the help of a very talented behavioral scientist to really talk to people and interview them, and then later on work with some data scientists to kind of crunch the numbers and really see what we were working with. So we did video interviews, we did written interviews, we did online surveys to really understand, and this is for creators around the world and creators
Right.
around the world, to really see what are the main areas that they all have in common where they're unable to really move forward, get that upward mobility. And the monetization and the licensing is a big one. And really what we saw from a overview is that, again, the larger companies kind of don't see this group because no one's measured the value here. So we did
Mm.
another survey. We went talking to some more creators to find out, what their spend is, how things are moving that they create and at what price, and who's buying it. And we're talking about billions of dollars annually, collectively,
Right.
on the IP that's created. And a lot of companies are missing this. Now, the blockchain part is about permanent records. If I tell you, hey, these guys are worth $7 to $10 billion a year, you're going to say to me, prove it.
Right.
Well, through our system, which captures that data and protects the records relating to those transactions and that data, we're able to do that. You don't have to take my word, and then I'm unable to pencil whip the information, to change it, to cook it. You're able to get legitimate outputs from their transactions that I nor my team can change. So it's better when you look at it and say, this is what's happening, probably more so than me telling you.
Right.
And that's what we want large businesses to see. We really want them to see the value that's here. We believe that there are a lot more opportunities that way, but
Okay.
we've gotten a lot of great reception, and we're happy, we're excited, we're anxious to move this thing forward because of it.
So I want to get back to that point as well about the enterprise reception later, but to continue this analysis of Hero Ledger as a creator. So let's just assume that, I'm a creator. I want to begin to use, Hero Ledger and Comic Chain. How do I get started?
Okay, great. So right now what we have is a registration page.
Mm-hmm.
And the purpose of that registration page is so that we have our first group of indie creators that'll test the commercial version this year. So you would sign up to that, and I'll get a link. I'll get you a link. But ultimately, creators are likely going to have their art on a external hard drive, on their mobile devices or their laptops, desktops. What we're saying is, first, you register an account, and then you register those art assets. And then you're going to manage them with the system to put them in the marketplace within the application. And you're going to set the pricing. You're going to set your license fees. You're going to set your terms. And there are digital contracts there to facilitate the transfer of the asset for a short period of time or a full period of time. And there are smart contracts to take that information and to transfer it to our blockchain safely and securely.
Okay.
So, creators are first going to sign up so they can get more information. And then next, when the application is ready, they're going to register themselves. They're going to register their assets and begin to manage those assets through the marketplace.
Understood. So without going into a lot of detail about what a smart contract entails in the blockchain space, I know that could be, an hours-long discussion for later. Sure. I understand it, but to try to simplify it for listeners out there, a smart contract is essentially an open-ended contract. You could seal part of it, which you're doing with the creators here, but you could also leave other things. So for example, if we had a smart contract, you were delivering 12 bushels of apples to me a day, we could leave something in the smart contract open, for example, for, hey, how those apples going to get to me, right? You can't carry them by foot. So we could open up that part of the smart contract for like a third party to come in. And I believe that's sort of what Hero Ledger's purpose is. You're exposing it to a larger environment. And with these smart contracts, you have other people that can come in and do fulfillment as part of this, right?
Absolutely. And manage terms. Basically, what you're saying is manage terms.
Excellent.
Whether that term is time, whether it's another asset or process. Yes.
Right.
And communicate that information to the blockchain. That's an important factor as well. That's smart.
Right. Because you need that public record. That's the only way that's the only way that smart contracts will work. That's the only way you can guarantee that, so-and-so has signed and the like.
Yes.
So the question then becomes for the Hero Ledger marketplace, and you only have to say as much as you feel comfortable. You don't even have to say anything at all, right? But what sort of additional enterprises are part of the marketplace? What is it? Perhaps an example of a completed smart contract in which what sort of other enterprise would contact a creator through Hero Ledger's marketplace, perhaps?
Very good. It's a great question. So one of the I would say tiers that we're talking to and that we're looking at are the small and middle tier studios that produce animation, that produce comics on a much larger scale, that produce and distribute comics, that are even agents who are looking for artistic IP for projects, for corporations of some sort. It could be for advertisement. It could be for a number of reasons. And so our ability to speak with these groups and to get buy-in to say, hey, here's an avenue for you to find works and collaborate with their creators for a term and have some work already to use. And it's both thematic. It can be price and time requirements, as well as with the small creators. So, we really focus on the small producers and the medium-sized producers, but we want the larger producers, out there to see the data on this.
Right.
But yes, definitely agents, licensing agents, middle-sized publishers of books, YA novels. The list is large. I mean, pretty much anybody and everybody that's involved in some form of media, entertainment,
Right.
visual narrative, even some of the medium-sized game companies, because we've talked to some of the smaller indie game creators, and they say this is great. This keeps me from having to create the sprite and focus on the story or focus on some other area of the production. So what we're trying to do is really work with those medium and smaller companies that have a bit more traction in the market to say, hey, you can cut your costs, your time, if you look into this window, which is our marketplace, and you're going to find some of the best stuff out there. So,
excellent.
Yeah,
it sounds like such an innovative solution. And like you said, in the old days, I guess an indie creator, they would have to worry about everything. I mean,
Sure.
It's not just about the art. They would have to worry about, hey, I got to find a local publisher. Then I got to find a distributor. Then I got to, call the stores and see if my units have sold. It sounds like in this case, by using a blockchain marketplace, by using smart contracts, you could take care of a lot of those problems for creators. Third parties, willing and able, could come in, start even just bidding on different assets they see out there,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know there's a big fear, or I should say anxiety, in many marketplaces when you look at what people are saying about AI, it's going to, kill our jobs. We're not here to eliminate jobs. What we're here to do is to create efficiencies between players already in a market. And, the proper use of the software technology along with the business leadership, and the business facilitation makes that possible. And so while some smaller creators will still access their agents to maybe get a book deal or, an animation deal, on the other end, they'll have some, creations in their inventory where a medium or small project that is in gaming or in comics, they'll be able to distribute those in that direction and have additional income. The idea here is not just one channel, but multiple channels of revenue. We want them to have multiple streams of income. We want them to have passive income. And when we look at this, if we treat it the right way, and this is advanced, and I'm not going to go into this too much. I'm not an accountant. If there are any people from the IRS watching, hey, but it also can potentially change their taxable status, giving them a little bit more advantage in the money they make, because we know there's a difference between taxation for wage earners and taxations for, say, capital gains and other forms of income. And so if they're exposed to other forms of income, if they're transacting and that yields another form of income, then they're going to have a different taxable situation.
Right.
And that could be very advantageous. Now, of course, like anything else, they would have to check with their professional teams on that, their professional service providers, accountants, financial gurus. But this is a general understanding that many of us have. Wages are the highest taxed. And, when we're already looking at a group that out of 100% in the US of what we call artists, 83% make absolutely no money from what they do.
Right.
So we've got to change that. We've got to get the 83 into the slot of the 17%.
Right.
And that cannot be accomplished by simply getting a job with a major studio.
Right.
That's definitely going to get them a little bit, more money. They're going to be able to pay the bills, but they're sitting on gold mines that they're not using properly. And we're here to say, look, take the time with this, and look at our environment. And Hero Ledger and Comic Chain are not solve all, it doesn't solve all problems. We looked at a number of issues and we feel that the set of software that we're creating will address other things that these creators need.
Right.
But this is where we're starting. You got to start somewhere. And this for us is a great place. And this marketplace is also unique. I want to point this out. We have some marketplaces out there that have allowed certain companies to backdoor and to build their large language models on. They've allowed some of the creators in that space to pretty much, kind of unwittingly, unknowingly to infringe upon larger companies' copyright rights in
Right.
the sense that, if Lego hasn't given me permission and Marvel Comics hasn't given me permission, and I go and create this great, new looking Lego with Captain America wrapper on it, I'm infringing these guys' intellectual property.
Right.
And I could potentially create a situation where they think that the other one is trying to do a workaround from the contract they have to cooperate. And I know that sounds, unusual, but we have to think a lot deeper about how and why we do things. So if I have a platform, I need to be very aware of what type of artistic assets are coming to that platform. Now, our focus is on paying attention that we also protect the intellectual property of Marvel, of DC, of Image, of Sony, by not allowing that intellectual property to come into our marketplace. Unless we have a deal with them, then we know what's coming in. But when we're talking about the casual illustrator or someone that might be a malicious actor thinking, okay, I'll thwart the system and just upload Superman, it's our responsibility to make sure that this artwork belongs to the creators that created it, that uploaded. And so we do have some features, and we've got some advanced technologies that we're working on to help us out with that as well. And we think that's where AI is going to be very helpful, not in, we've done experiments where, you take your characters and put them together and make a third character. That's fine. But where AI is helping us to identify gaps in security, we feel that that's a better use of the technology than with just large language models or,
Right.
Yeah. So, this is important for us. Intellectual property protection is important for us.
So those are perhaps, some of the biggest legal hurdles, definitely, that, has been part of launching Hero Ledger. Are there any specific technological obstacles that you've run into?
Yes. Yeah, sure. All the time.
Yeah.
But one, so our goal is to have a fully autonomous blockchain. When we stood up our MVP, we did so through the Ethereum test environment. And from that point, we, in our upgrades, we moved to the Cosmos network. Great environment. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great environment. But there are, unfortunately, some of the tools they're no longer supported and don't really allow for, commercial use that's going to be secure when we talk about the transfer of financial values, where, if there's crypto being moved, possibly assets from one wallet to another. So it's very important for us to, if we're going to coexist in an environment that has, that provides you an autonomous chain, that this environment is, we can use it commercially to
Right.
fulfill financial transactions, right? And it also has to have the ability to scale for us because we're doing a very custom work, but a lot of them do, but it has to, that's just a concern, so those are the biggest ones.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Have you had any advantages perhaps to using like an existing network like a Cosmos or something versus
Sure.
perhaps trying to bake your own using, a Hyperledger from scratch or?
Absolutely. Well, the advantage, and we're doing things in phases.
Mm,
Well, we're in second phase where it's using an autonomous chain through an pre-established
yeah,
blockchain network. Well, the advantage is that they've got a SDK. So
right.
our guys do definitely have to have some knowledge of these things. But one of the great things that we look at is if it's already Ethereum compatible, that's going to be huge for us. And the Cosmos network has been for sure. There are a number of these environments that are. Currently, we're doing some tests with the private Ethereum network.
Right.
And so far, so good. We're doing a few more. We'll see how it works. But our next phase, and that'll be definitely after commercial launch, we don't know how long, it will be to build a blockchain from the ground up. So we're talking about 100% autonomous.
Yeah.
And if we're successful, we may be able to use the Polkadot Cosmos model and allow other very skilled developers to come in and build around it and provide even better, newer, more secure services for creators.
Yeah.
So that's
I, I,
our goal.
I think for most young technology companies, that's always an issue that, if you're kind of like, um, shoehorned, well, if you're attached to someone else's platform, a lot of your scaling difficulties may be linked to that platform, right?
Sure,
So,
absolutely, absolutely.
so,
Yeah, we were
so
concerned
then,
about that with Ethereum for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I know with Ethereum, they've got things like gas prices and usage that
Big
it's
time.
going to add up for you. So, yeah.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
I guess then speaking of adding up, the $1 million question on everyone's mind is how would creators then be paid or compensated through Hero Ledger?
Great question. So we have a model where within the application, it's really I would say your typical digital storefront. So they're going to connect from if they're relying on crypto and they will have the option to do so or not do so, right? So the traditional fiat, they'll have access to systems like Stripe or PayPal. They will get the money directly, less our fees, the transaction fee. If they're dealing with crypto, they'll be able to connect their wallet. And, I'm really proud to say that we definitely have that feature in Hero Ledger. So they'll be able to connect their wallet. And we want to start creating some unique wallets, some unique financial tools where not only will crypto exchanges happen in those wallets, but also asset exchanges. So
Ah,
actual, IP, artistic IP being exchanged. But that's going to take some time, but we're looking at it and it is possible. We do know that, but we just have to get to the point of the resources. So yes, when we talk about the financial, being able to get paid for what you do, when somebody clicks the button for buy, they've got to have the ability, or they've got to have a wallet, a digital wallet, or another, card or pay instrument connected, and they're going to be able to acquire that asset. And that money, less the fee, is going to go to the seller. When it comes to licensing, similar, they're going to pay a license fee to use the product. And upon using that product, if they are successful with, let's say they purchase a character or they license a character, I should say,
hmm.
and they add that character to a t-shirt. Well, if they sell that t-shirt, they're going to owe the owner of that character a royalty for the use. And there's going to be the process of getting that money from the licensee back over to the licensor when it comes to royalties. And so we want to do this through wallets. We also want to do it through, again, the traditional transaction tools of payment gateways. So that's how we're set up.
So one thing that actually came to mind as you mentioned, being able to compensate creators through crypto. Initially, upon commercial launch, is it just for, I guess, creators in the United States, or are you looking at the international market any?
So that's a very good question. We really don't have any barriers. The
Hmm.
barriers are those of the countries. So we have seen some barriers, in fact. But to
Yeah.
answer your question, we welcome every small, medium, and large creator to our platform. We really do. We want the small creators to benefit the most, and we believe they can provide the most value and receive the most value. But we do know that there are challenges in, say, places like France and places like India.
Yeah.
When you look at India, crypto, you're not able to use it. So that's a feature that they will not have access to. And we're looking
Okay.
at the programming where when someone is trying to access our system, certain features are disabled, right? And then they can use the traditional payment gateway,
Yeah.
right? So for France is not a payment gateway issue or even a crypto use issue that I understand. France has a very unique set of circumstances where the government and really the art community at large, they're really against their artists selling the art,
Huh.
because when you sell it, you're going to assign all the rights to the owner. They're really that's frowned upon. So that would be an environment where we're going to spend more time talking about licensing, right?
Right.
That's the have your cake and eat it too.
Right.
So there are not just the issues with crypto, using crypto, but there are other nuances, and using, France as an example is, a good way to show that we've got the traditional, crypto is, not regulated or it's not allowed. And then you have a specific cultural nuance to art and the restrictions that are there. It's not illegal, but it's frowned upon. So culturally, it's a no-go. So we would definitely spend more time with licensing there.
Understood.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, in addition to, I guess, the licensing problems that are posed by, internationalization, would you say you've run into perhaps cultural problems, I guess, explaining licensing to people? I mean, for me, light bulb came on in my head where when you were explaining, licensing and, that sort of issue, it kind of reminded me maybe 20 years ago, I mean, around the whole MP3 thing when that was first an issue out there, and trying to explain to people that, hey, just because you buy a CD, you don't have the right to do whatever you want with it, including rebroadcast it. Do you find that there's, even to this day, some issues explaining how licensing models work? I mean, certainly you don't want some of your creators to find out that, and we both know this actually happened. There's
Okay.
Kickstarters for, revivals of series from people who don't even own
Right.
the rights to it, right? So,
That's correct. Yeah, I've seen that. The
yeah.
projects look great, but it's illegal, guys. Well, to speak on that, number one, I've had no issues explaining these things. If my team knows anything about me, I can yak all day. And I'm sure you know this by now too. But there haven't been any real hurdles in explaining it. What we're trying to do is really make the knowledge of, I would say, certain legal aspects that are somewhat nuanced to make it simpler to understand and to really bring it forward where it becomes common knowledge, not
Hmm.
something that people are guessing at. To give you a great example of this, when we talk about IP protection, I had this conversation a million times. I love having this conversation. So no system except the justice system of a government can truly determine, and I would say in one sense, determine, well, let's just leave it at that for now, to determine who owns something. Okay. A judge has to make that call, or whoever is the mediator, if it's going to a mediation organization, but whoever the judge is or the governance group within mediation,
Hmm.
they make the call. What we can do when it comes to protection is provide the best set of records that help in the legal process of proving your ownership.
Right. Right.
You see, and that's key because I've seen a tremendous number of blockchain projects, crypto projects say that, oh, we protect it, and oh, it's secure. The records can be secure if the records are secure, right? Yeah. But you can't make a determination legally on behalf of that user and that asset. So what I love is that we focus on two very important aspects, and that is the validity of the asset, who owns the asset, okay, or who is said to own the asset, and who the owner is. So, provenance is important in the process as well.
Right. That's part of why the blockchain is there, prove the history, the provenance of it. But right.
But the I would say the letdown is overemphasizing on the provenance of the asset and not the owner or originator. So we know Chris owns this particular NFT, right? But who is Chris?
Right.
We don't know who Chris is. Now, when we can have information on who Chris is, and we know that Chris owns this asset, and we have information on the asset too, now that is I would say a better drawn out example that we can now move to our legal team to defend our place in ownership and protection. And again, there are some advanced tools that help with protection. We look at tracking. We look at there's a brilliant tool, and I believe somewhere between Stanford and MIT, these guys have come up with a tool. It's called Nightshade. And if you're familiar or not familiar with Nightshade, Nightshade obfuscates language models and various robots that are trying to scrape images, audio, text, and it can't train on those models. It can't see those.
Oh,
models.
Interesting.
Absolutely. Brilliant stuff. We didn't create it, I wish, but this was some brilliant students, but they made those tools available, open source. So being able to have tools like that, being able to have tools that track. I mean, you have a brilliant company today, I believe they're still around, called CopyTrack. And it was really about tracing assets online. These kind of things are important and they're necessary. So, they don't have to be blockchain or crypto centric, but we do need to look at technologies that augment distributed ledger and cryptography. We do have to look at those things, because when we boast and say, our blockchain does this or our crypto project does that, some hacker out there is going to test that.
Yeah.
They're going to test it. And if you fail, everybody's going to know.
Right.
So, we try to do the best we can. We're not perfect. And it's one step at a time for us, but we are aware. And we do not, with all these technical things, let me say, with all these technical things, we are not really interested in filling the creators' heads with a lot of the technical details.
Right.
We want them to transact seamlessly. We want to make sure we know these things and have them there, and then be able to articulate and show their use to regulators, to business partners, and to the users and consumers themselves. That's very important for us. So, we don't expect them to remember all this stuff and, no consensus and all that. No.
Yeah.
They got enough to do.
That's true. So one question that I do want to ask is,
Sure.
given the fact that you have mentioned, NFTs, and has the, negative backlash towards NFTs and, how blockchain was perceived previously in the public consciousness, has that affected Hero Ledger any or Raster?
Well, if it has, we haven't heard of it, but I would say that, in the art environment, there's a lot of creators who are against AI.
Right.
They are, and I mean against it, not even, they're against AI, they're against cryptocurrencies, and they're against NFTs. My team included, most people that have talked to me about this subject, they know I am not a fan of NFTs. I'm a fan of non-fungible token technology,
Right.
but I am not a fan of how artificial intelligence or large language models imitating AI or AGI, imitating AGI, NFTs, cryptocurrencies. I'm not a fan of how the outside technology and business environments have tried to corrupt and flood the art markets, traditional art markets with fine art, as well as, comics and, some of the other stuff, sculpture.
Yeah.
How they flooded these markets with this, basically with a bunch of gimmick advertisements, gimmick information, and gimmick ideas. But I do believe there are going to be some really great use cases for the non-fungible tokens. And there definitely are when we talk about outside of art, for sure.
Yeah.
But definitely inside. But right now, what we look at is a creator who has to focus on tooling out a comic book, tooling out a game, or whatever that is. How much time, money, and effort do they have to put forward in educating their customer about an NFT?
Right.
Right. Now we're taken away from our core business to learn and do something that, it's not even worth its weight in salt. It's not.
Yeah.
And so what we try to do is be very specific that this is not about NFTs. This is about the same files that you use and you store on your computers, your Word docs, your, for written scripts, your JPEGs or your, .tiff or whatever it is that you use for your illustration or animation. That is the file that is being accounted for in the blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
That is the file that the licensee or the buyer is going to work with for production. And so it's a strong B2B message that we have. And the NFT message is more B2C. It really is.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the difference that needs to be in a lot of people's minds is, if there's a non-fungible token that's being used for something, it should carry value with it that's associated with something else rather than just be value for just its own value's sake. Right. So
sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
A work or, a piece of artwork that's protected through a hero ledger, that has an intrinsic value on its own as a piece of art.
Yes.
It's not just valuable because it's for the sake of being valuable, as many of these, ape NFTs have proven to be. So,
right. I mean, we want to look at the usefulness to our creators. We want to look at the security, and like you said, that value. But the legality too. That's huge. It's huge.
Yeah.
I kind of get it, right? I was on that bandwagon about, wow, come on, SEC, calm down a bit,
Yeah.
But the reality is, when you take our currency, nobody saves $1 thinking that $1 is going to go up in value. Past Forex, but nobody, you don't hold on to $1 for 15 years thinking, okay, it might be worth 500.
Yeah.
Right. And so when we talk about cryptocurrencies, we're really talking about something that, these organizations are looking at, and they're making their comparisons. We say, come on, we're trying to have fun, or we're trying to build and innovate, but we do have to factor in the laws. We really do.
Yeah.
And it has to make sense. It has
Right.
to make sense. And a lot of these projects haven't made sense. I mean, to be quite honest with you, they make no sense. I remember a group, I won't say any names, but they were like, oh, we're going to put we're going to put comic books on the blockchain. And I'm thinking, how do you do that? How do you do
What's
that?
the advantage there, right? So, yeah.
Well, we could definitely say what's the advantage, but how do you do that, right? If you tell somebody you're going to put a comic book on the blockchain, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah.
That by itself is we don't need to ask any more questions because that right there is alien.
Yeah.
But you have people, they just run with it. They spend no time in this space, and like I said, I've spent a lot of time in the space. I've talked to brilliant minds, more brilliant than myself, taken a lot of notes, and we're prepared.
Right.
We're really prepared. And we don't want this to just be about crypto blockchain. It's not.
Right.
It's about
bringing value to a creator. That's what the end goal is. You're using the technology to serve the goal rather than have it there for technology's sake. I get it.
That's correct. I mean, quantum might become something amazing, and I'm sure it will be. And if there are tools from quantum that can help these guys out, we will be using that too. It's not about the tool, it's about what the tool can do to help these creators. So
no, that makes sense. So to kind of bring us down then from this really heavy conversation we've been having, I guess I should close by asking you then, being such a fan of comics, if you could have any superpower, then what would that be?
So I'll joke at first and then I answer it. My first superpower would be getting our tools to market faster. But if I could have any superpower, and it was, I was just talking about Dr. Manhattan the other day.
Yeah.
And I would have to probably be somewhere between, a cosmic being like Galactus, Dr. Manhattan, not quite a watcher, but somebody that's got, major power.
Yeah. Someone that could like rewrite reality, right? So
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty
Okay.
much, yeah.
For me, I think so there's so many things when you being able to fly, right? So, okay, maybe you're able to fly, but would you account for all these things that, like motion sickness, right? So the sudden acceleration, deceleration, there's so many things. Like I want to keep my superpower simple. If I could have a superpower, I just don't need to sleep. That's really, I could get so much more done if you just don't need to sleep. Yeah. Right. That's what I would choose. So.
I like that. That's nice.
Nice. So once again, Dion, thank you so much for the conversation today.
Absolutely.
It was great.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Been fun, man.
Okay. Thanks so much.
We'd be happy to give your Salesforce org a second look. Thank you for subscribing. We look forward to seeing you on our next episode.